Hello, everyone, and welcome to the ArcGIS Experience Builder session called Getting Started with Creating Web Solutions. My name is David Martinez, and I'm here with my colleague, Yue Ma.
Hello.
And we are with the Experience Builder development team. I'm a product engineer, and Yue is one of our talented developers. With that, let's get started. In today's session, we're going to cover the following agenda. We'll introduce you to Experience Builder and demonstrate some of the UI. From there, we'll go into the developer tools. Next, we'll get into some key concepts for widget development and creating a widget. We'll switch gears and talk about the UI system in Experience Builder, which includes themes and components. And then we'll wrap things up with the next steps, and those will be actions on your part. So, what is an experience? Well, we define an experience how you cognitively and emotionally interact with digital content, either for business or your just daily life. This can consist of web pages, web apps, or mobile apps. And a perfect example of this is when you go to a site, you're not trying to decipher and say, is this a web page or is this a web app? You're basically looking at, is this giving me the best experience possible? Is it quick? Does it load fast? Is it responsive? So, what we did is we took, to make use of the digital content, we created ArcGIS Experience Builder. And what this does is it allows you to create unique web experiences using flexible layouts, content, and widgets that interact with 2D and 3D data. And some of the benefits include complete control over the layout and design. In other words, one design doesn't fit all. And for those who don't need that complete control, you can get started with one of our templates that meets your most common workflows. And of course, since this is a developer presentation, we need that ability to create our own custom workflows. And when we first started scoping out Experience Builder, we had these design goals in mind as requirements. First, it had to be data-driven. So basically, your app's designs are driven by your data. I would argue that your data is always going to drive your app design. It's not going to be the other way around. We wanted flexibility in mind, the ability to create experiences and apps, whether it's map-centric or non-map-centric, whether it's a linear scrolling page, for example, configurable. Allow you to create apps with ease. With each release of Experience Builder, we'll provide additional templates as well. Extensibility. We looked back at what we need to provide, and we needed to provide not only extensibility, but an SDK that included samples and an API reference that comes directly from our source code. And mobile adaptivity. And basically what this is, it provides you the options to create unique designs for large screen and small screen sizes. For example, maybe the map is front and center in a large screen size. But in a mobile view, maybe the list is the primary view and the map is secondary on another page. And basically what that is each layout is an adaptation of the experience, which offers more flexibility and customization for better usage of screen size with different content. So let's talk about our technology stack. Like I said before, Experience Builder is an extensible framework, and we use several technologies. So let's start from the bottom. We use TypeScript, and that's our official language. It's worked very well for us, and it's used throughout the builder. React is a library we use for building user interfaces. Redux is a predictable state container that helps us manage app state in an app store. Webpack is used for module bundle. And of course, we use the latest ArcGIS API 4x for working with ArcGIS technology. And what's great about it is we only load the API when it's needed. And at the center of this all is our GMU library. And this is a framework, and that's what you're going to use to extend Experience Builder. And we'll talk about this shortly. So there are several components that make up an experience. First, you start with a template, either one created that we provided, or you can create your own. Then you add your widgets. And if you'd like, you can change the default color scheme or font by selecting a new theme. Data sources is going to be what's providing the data coming into your widgets. Some widgets might have a data source, some may not. And then finally, what we do is we inject our GMU library into everything, and then that's provided within the builder. All this gets bundled into that, and then what happens is everything gets injected to this config.json file that makes up all those different areas of that experience, and then that creates your experience, and then it's rendered. And now, as opposed to talking about it, what I wanted to do was take some time to give you a quick UI walkthrough, because what I've realized is some of you, this may be your first exposure to looking at the Experience Builder. So I'm going to go ahead and switch my screen here, and we're going to go into the local browser here. And remember, there's two versions of Experience Builder. There's one for experience.arcgis.com. That's our online version. That's WYSIWYG. What you see is what you get. Here, what I'm looking at is our developer edition, Experience Builder. And this is the one for developers, and it has extensibility, and that's what we're going to be talking about today. So when you first come into Experience Builder, you're going to be at the Experience Gallery. So this is going to contain all your experiences. And one thing I like to point out is all your experiences here are not on ArcGIS Line. They're hosted on your local developer edition. So it is up to you to publish those to your favorite web service. And the way you do that is you click these more options here, and you hit download, and then you distribute that package to your local IS server, okay? So as you can see what states these experiences are in. This one's published. These are in draft mode. So let's go through the process of creating a new experience. So once I hit create new, I'm going to be presented with all the templates that we provide. Now these are templates that our team has vetted to provide you responsiveness. Going back to that mobile adaptation, the first four are map-centric templates where it's a full screen app. The next three are more of your linear scrolling type page, more of a flow layout. And then of course, if any of these don't meet your requirements, you can create a blank screen template or blank scrolling page and create your own. But first, let's just go ahead and select a template here. And when we first come into the UI, there's lots of different options here. The first is on our side panel here. Let's go ahead and unlock this layout. And basically what this lock layout does is if you're going to provide a template to users, this prevents them from adding any widgets or changing any positions of widgets. This plus sign here is basically the widget panel, allows you to add the widgets. Here shows the current page. In this experience, we have one page loaded. This is access to my different data sources. Since this is a template, there's no data source. And here's how you change the theme just by selecting it or customizing it. At our top here, we have our header. This is basically the name of the experience. By default, we use Untitled Experience when we create it, and then we just do a number count. You can look at the experience in live view before you preview or publish it. These show the template in different form factors from medium to small screen size. One thing I want to make note of is you're going to see the title widget here, but if I go to the mobile view, you're going to see there's no widget there for title. That's by design because we're dealing with limited real estate. And that goes back to that mobile adaptive design where you have control over that. So when we create these templates, we've made sure they're responsive in all three form factors. When you create your own template from a blank template, for example, you're going to need to do that. Next thing you can do is there's some undo redos here. You can save, you can preview the app, and then here you can download, create a new one. You could generate a template as well. And of course, if you're done with this, you can hit publish. But let's go through the process of creating a blank page. So what I'm going to do is add a blank page here and use blank full screen app. And I'm going to walk you through the process of creating a simple application real quick. So we're going to go ahead and add a widget. And simply what you do is just drag that to the canvas. So this is your canvas. And the best way to size this is to use these toolbars above. And you can, so I want to snap this to the left, okay? And I want to take full height of this. And then here I could drag this if I know the width, right? Another option is you can go into the style here. And I want to talk about these size and position properties real quick. This is a custom, right? Because this is taking up 45% of that. So let's say I wanted 50% of this, right? Since this is the full height, that's auto, so the builder automatically aligns that for you based upon that position. Since we snapped it to the left, this is going to be 0. As you notice, this right is by default because left is overriding that. So let's assume that I change this width to auto. Okay, you're going to notice, whoa, where did my widget go? Well, I can simply change this right to custom, and now you're going to see my widget here that is absorbing 50% of the right. So if I'm going to act, now what I want to do now is add a data source to this. I select my content, select the web map, add new data, and the map widget supports 2 types of data sources, and we'll talk about these in a little detail, web map and web scene. So I'm going to go ahead and select this Iowa Green Certified Breweries here. Now I'm going to select my data source, okay, and there's my map. So let's go in a little bit because I have some layer visibility. Okay, so there's my data points. The next thing I want to do is I want to add a list to this. So I'm going to simply grab the list widget here. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to align this to snap it to the right. And then what we'll do is we'll do this full height. And then we'll just drag this over so it absorbs the rest of this. And within the list widget, you have different options to select templates. So I'm going to go ahead and select this template. I'm going to hit start. Same workflow as the map. You're going to select your data. And I'm going to select the Iowa Green, okay? And an interesting note of the list widget, it comprises of different widgets. This is the image widget, which is over here, as well as a text in the button widget. So I'm going to go ahead and click the image widget. I'm going to select dynamic, and basically I have a URL that contains the thumbnail of the graphic. Here I'm going to select the text widget, select the data here, select the name, okay? And then if I wanted to, I could click the button here and say, okay, this is more info here. And you could have another page that provides the user with more info that's beyond the list. And let's select page, and we'll go ahead and select page 1, which was the first page created with this template. And the next thing I can do is I can come in here and say, okay, I want to create an action for a trigger based on an extent change for the list, okay? And I'm going to filter based upon the extent. And then I want to do the same thing for the list and add a trigger on any selection change in the map. Remember, one of the beauties about Experience Builder is you can have multiple maps. So this one, we're going to use map 2, and then we're going to zoom to. And then you can choose the zoom scale. We'll accept the default, which is automatic here. Let's hit save. And then if we come into our experience here, you can see the list widgets filtering right there. I'm going to select one here. And then, okay, that launches a pop-up. So if I select here, that's going to go into that area right there. And then the list filters right there. Okay, so that's a simple demo of the UI in here. And you could do lots of different stuff. I'm thinking what we're going to do over the next month or so, we're going to be releasing some videos to go in more detail about certain configurations of Experience Builder that we'll host on YouTube. Okay, so let's get back into our presentation here. Okay, so if I go back into PowerPoint here, and as my screen wants to. Okay, so let's talk about developer tools. The first thing that you're going to do is to get the developer edition, you're going to download it from our development website. And if let's get out of here real quick, and let's go into our browser here. And for some reason it's not showing up on my screen, but okay, so let's just exit out of here. All right, bear with me here. I'm having some problems getting my mouse back here. Okay, so I think we'll just exit out of the screen here. Okay, so now if I go into my browser here, so we released the product and we released a new developer site for this. So the easiest way to get started is download the SDK. You sign in and then you download it and then you unpackage. And then we have the directions how to install it, whether you're going to register your ID through the developer site, or if you're more familiar with using the client ID and online. And what we did is we created a guide with some core concepts, some widget developments, how to get started. And then more importantly, what we did is we've uploaded our API reference that's coming from our source code. And we'll add more interfaces, more methods, and document more with each release. More importantly, I think, is we provided sample code. So let's say I'm interested in showing the extent. We give you how it works, a little snippet, and then you can actually go to the repo, which is on Esri org, and you can clone that repo and use it directly in your environment. Okay, so let's get back to my presentation here. So out of the box, things that you would need to know as you extend Experience Builder: GIMU, React, and TypeScript. So let's talk about a couple of these. So the first thing is GIMU. So what is GIMU? It's a JavaScript library, and it's used in Experience Builder. We created it. So GIMU core provides the interfaces and types to work with widgets, properties, message actions, and data sources. And then it also defines several classes that you're going to be used throughout your experiences. For those who are used to working with the JavaScript API, or you're going to utilize ArcGIS services, of course, we have a GIMU ArcGIS package that basically contains classes and methods for working with the API. The GIMU UI includes UI components to be used in your experiences. And we recommend to always use our components to ensure consistency across the Experience Builder system. And then the GIMU builder is used for developing the widget setting page. And we use React. And basically, what is React? It's a JavaScript library. Pretty straightforward for building user interfaces. Think of it as the view in MVC. The great thing about React is it has this virtual DOM, and it basically represents the UI in memory. And basically what it does is, as opposed to rendering everything in the DOM, React has this virtual DOM, so if you have some change in state, which updates the UI, it's going to update that area of that. Thinking of React, so that's why it's an abstraction from the DOM. And when you're developing widgets, just think of a widget as basically a React component. And that's all it is. It's about writing and creating components. And basically what it does is it splits the UI into its independent and reusable pieces. And it only updates when it needs to, providing like simple semantics such as props, state, and lifecycle. And there's two approaches to creating components, either using function and class. And like I said before, since our entire system is built on TypeScript, you're going to use TypeScript to extend widgets. And basically, it's a superset of JavaScript. And once you have TypeScript plus GIMU plus React, it's just goodness. So let's dive into widget development, and let's talk about that. So when we're looking at the widget structure, the folder structure of your widget is going to be the name of your widget, okay, is going to be your main, your directory. And then from there, you're going to have, under there, you're going to have your config.json. So if you're injecting anything into the widget, it's going to contain your config. You're going to have the icon for the widget, which is basically going to be in the builder. And then you're going to have the manifest.json. From there, you're going to have a distribution folder, which is your compiled code. That's what Webpack's going to take care of for you. And then you're going to have your source. And then your source is going to go in two directions. And you're going to have a runtime folder, which is basically where your widget TSX is going to have. And then if any other dependencies, maybe you're going to make use of other components, you would have them in there as well. That includes assets and translations. And then for your settings, like if you're going to provide a setting for your user to configure a widget, that's going to exist in your settings.tsx file. And for those who are very familiar with developing with our other product, which is Web App Builder, I wanted to put this in perspective for you. So when you're developing Web App Builder, you have a map, and then the widgets hold a map object and can talk directly to the map, okay? And with Experience Builder, this is different, as you can have multiple maps, and they may require connections to different data sources. This is called data-driven. And a data source defines how a widget accesses data. Data can be a remote service. It can be stored in an app. It can be generated by a widget and used by another. A widget can use more than one data source. And you like to think of data source, it can exist globally or locally as well. And basically, there's two ways to create a widget. The first is class components. It makes use of ES6 and extends the component class in React. In our example, we'll extend the widget class. It can maintain its own data and state. You can pass props down to other class components and access them with this.props. Class components will always use the render method in React. On the other way to create components slash widgets is through function components. These are basic JavaScript functions. They can access props, use a state, and other features using React hooks. And importantly, there is no render method in function. So let's take a look at an example of how this works. So our first instance here is a class component. This code snippet below creates a simple class component. It loads the necessary modules and exports the default widget class and declares the type for all widget props. And basically that's going to use props of the widget. The render method is called to return the output of hello world and the widget name coming from this.props label. Okay. So now let's look at the same example using a function component. The example loads the modules needed to create a simple hello world function widget. The widget is declared as a function with the types props, all widget props, which is using props of the widget. You're going to notice there's no render in here, so you're going to have a return statement, and that return statement is your output. That returns the hello world and the widget name from the props.label. Okay. In most experiences, a widget will need to work with a map view or a scene view and also access layers. To ensure we have a consistent extensibility model, we've wrapped in everything as a GIMU map view to make it easy to use JavaScript functionality across it. And to create a map view, you basically use the GIMU map view object, such as mapViewMapManager.createGIMU and then pass in your properties there, such as the view, which contains the view object, the data source, which is the data source to create the view, the map widget ID, that creates the widget option, and if you're going to work with any layers of that. So as opposed to me talking about it, let's get into a demo and create a widget in Experience Builder. So we use Visual Studio Code here, and what we're going to do is, for some reason, my workspace was unupdated. Okay, so let's get back into this now that's fixed. So it's a good pattern to load your client directory in your favorite IDE. And what this allows you to do, it allows you to use IntelliSense. Okay, you want to get access to as you type that you can use our types or interfaces and basically our API. So here we're looking at the client directory, and where you're going to be working at mostly is in your extensions. Okay, so you're going to notice that we have this client service running, and this is basically listening to any changes in this extension folders. Right off the back, tip number one is green is good text, okay? If you see anything in red, there's a problem. It could be the naming convention of widget, it could be a bug in your code. You'll get a flag here in most cases. So we're gonna go into our map view widget here, and you can see we have a runtime for widget and a settings TSX. So let's go into our widget settings TSX, and let's build this widget. So the first thing that we're going to do is I want to show you the manifest JSON here. And here, by default, the name property map view needs to match the name property on the folder. Otherwise, it's not going to work. The label property here is basically going to give you the description in the builder of what you want that string to represent the text in the builder. At the bare minimum, you need the name, the type, the versions of these two for the manifest. All these others will change depending upon your widget. And this one has properties of locale. We don't have a locale here. And then the default size is basically when your user drags that to the canvas, what the default size of that widget is. So let's get back into our widget TSX and let's create our widget here. So the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to import the necessary modules. Here we're importing React from our GIMU core, data source component. We're going to use the all widget props from GIMU core. As you can see, we have stuff baked in. This is pulling directly from our API there. Then we're going to import the map view and the web map and extent from the Esri modules there. And then we're going to import the map view manager and the web map data source. Okay. So let's start building this out. Okay, so the next thing that we need to do is we need to create our default class here, and let's just format this code here. So basically what we have is a class here of widget. It's coming off the base widget. We're loading the types all widget props here, okay, so it gives access to the properties. And then in React, sometimes you might need to interact directly with DOM nodes or React elements created in the render method. This is possible using this method here, createRef. So we're going to pass our map as a container to hold it in that div element. And then here we have some interfaces for properties for map view, web map, which we're going to use. We're going to do a watch handle to listen to the extent, and this gets an instance of our map view manager. So let's go ahead and add some more logic here. The next thing we're going to do is create a function to load our web map logic here. So bear with me here. I'm just going to format this code because this will drive me crazy if I don't. And then we'll walk through this code real quick here. So Shift Option F. Okay. So basically what we have here is we have a web map as a data source here assigned to this parameter. If it's a web map, right, so this will be truthy, you return. Otherwise, if it is, keep exiting, keep going, not exiting. So here we're going to assign some options to the map view property. So that's going to include the map for the web map, data source.map. And here we're going to change the highlight option. So this is coming directly from the JS API right here. So we're going to change the highlight option. So when you select a feature to this color, which I believe is yellow, the container is going to be this map.container current. And then basically here is we're going to parse the extent to a JavaScript object here. And then this is where we create our map view object here. We grab the widget ID and then pass in this props ID. Here our view, we create a new view instance. We assign those options. And then our data source ID is going to be our web map. And then our promise based here is doing some extent, okay? The next thing we need is we need a container for our widget here. So we're going to add a map node property and assign it to this div class name. And we want our user to be able to style the widget to 100% height and width. And then our reference for this, it's going to be in this map.container. So the last thing that we need to do is we need to pass in the render function for this particular one here. And let's see, Shift Option F. Here it looks like, oh, we got two instances here for some reason. Okay, so my code snippets are wrong there. Okay. All right, so now basically looking at this render function, it's going to say, hey, if there's no data source in the data source length, please choose a web map setting. Otherwise, use the data source component to grab the data source and then use the data source created to create our data source map view, calling that ds created, and then assign it to this .map node. Okay. So if we save this, the next thing we want to do is we want to create a settings page for our users, settings panel for our users to configure. So what we're going to do is we're going to uncomment this code here. And this is, so the settings widget is similar to the widget, except that you're going to have a setting.tsx. And here we're using the base widget setting here from the GIMU builder. We're going to look for data source types, and then we're going to use the data source selector to allow our user to configure the widget. So let's do command, command KU here to uncomment these. Here you're going to see class of setting. It's off the base widget setting. We're going to assign the supported types property to look for a data source types web map. You can have multiple data sources in a widget. So if you wanted more, you could add more in there. And then on data source selected, we're basically going to grab that data source. And this setting change is going to listen to anything that we change for the data source and use the current selected state. And the last thing that we're going to need to do is we're going to pass in the render method for our data source component here. And then we're going to use the type, which is the supported types, which is web map. And then we're going to use the data source properties to use that data source. And then on select, we're going to use the selected one. So if we save this and we go back into our widget here And what we'll do is you're going to refresh the page here. And then what we'll do is we'll add a new page here, blank. And then we're going to go into our widget panel and we'll grab the map view here. There's no web map, so there's our setting telling us to change. We're going to select a data set here. You're going to notice the only data source supported is web map, okay, which is by design. We'll select this one. Okay, we'll select this map here, hit live view, and we'll just scroll in, and then there's my yellow highlight that we changed. Okay. Now that wasn't a simple widget that we created, but hopefully that gave you some fundamentals to build widgets. So now what I want to do is turn it over to my colleague Yue so he could talk about themes and UI components. So Yue, go ahead.
All right. All right. Thanks, David. All right. So in the following sections that we are going to walk through the theme framework and the UI components library from Experience Builder to see how you can utilize these existing tools in your development work. So first, let's get started with the themes. So why having a theme framework in Experience Builder? So one of the reasons is to provide the end users with the ability to define and customize applications overall look and feel. So right now, the users, they can configure the look and feel of their apps by simply modifying the theme variables using the setting panels in the builder's UI and come up with different designs on the fly. So this will save time for the users as they no longer need to know how to write CSS. Okay. And besides giving the users more freedom in theming the apps, we would also like to provide designers and developers with more flexibility. So since the new theming framework is variable based and utilizing a CSS in JavaScript library, the design and development process is much easier compared to the old way of creating CSS styles, such as in Web Builder. So no CSS word write, and the output theme can be shared. All right, so let's taking these two screenshots shown here as an example. The light and dark themes are both configured using the same theme system. Instead of writing CSS to override to achieve a different look. Now you can customize themes in a configurable way. So a theme now can be customized by providing new values to the theme parameters, or I call it theme variables in a JSON format. So for example, to make this light theme to this dark theme, all you can do is to provide different color values to the theme variables, such as telling the theme to use dark gray as the container background color instead of the white, or to use the purple as the header background instead of the blue color. This is how you, for example, to switch from this light theme to this dark theme. So how does the theme system work? So in Experience Builder, we provide a default theme, or I call it the master theme, that consists of the followings. First are the variables. These are the key parameters that define the core aspects from a UI design, such as colors, font, spacing, border, shadow, and etc. And then we have the style modules. These are the functions that generate the CSS files for the UI components on the fly. And the variables mentioned above are usually referenced here in these style modules. So at the runtime, the style modules are loaded and dynamically read the variables and generate the CSS files. And these CSS files are inserted into the app as static CSS. The other themes are all extended from this default theme through the approaches by such as customizing the theme variables, or adding extra style modules. So let's take a closer look from a more visual way. So this chart shows the flow of how a theme is working under the hood along with the components and the widgets. So at the top left is the theme itself. It contains the core variables. The core variables are they also have their corresponding CSS utility classes, which you see on the right. These classes can be added to the UI elements to quickly add styles to the elements. And then the core variables are referenced by the variables for the components. For example, the button component has its own background color variable, and this variable is using one of the colors from the core variables. Then the component variables are passed to the style modules, which are the functions, as I mentioned, to generate the CSS styles at the runtime. So the CSS then are used to style the components shown in the middle of the screen over here, the UI components. And by default, the UI components, they are unstyled. So basically, they don't come with the styles without a theme. And they only provide the HTML structures, lifecycle functions, props definitions, and the functional logics. Then at the bottom, we have the widget. Because the widgets are built with the UI components from the theme, they inherit the styles from the theme as well. So a widget can optionally also have its own CSS styles and utilize the CSS utility classes from the theme to customize its look and feel. All right, so next, we're going to see how exactly this master theme is going to generate the other themes. So the theme over here, it is provided as the default theme in the builder. And all the other themes, including the out-of-box themes and any other custom themes that you might create in the future, are all considered as customizations based on the master theme over here. All right, so let's take a closer look at the out-of-box themes by looking at the builder itself. So over here, I have already created an application using one of the templates. So over here, within this app, on the left, we have a panel, and on the right, we have a map. So within the builder UI, on the left-hand side, within this menu bar, you can click this theme icon to bring up the theme settings. By default, we have the default theme selected, and then you can optionally choose other themes by clicking the other ones. For example, this start theme, as you can see, it changes the panel background to black, and on the opposite, it uses white as a text color. And another thing I want to mention is this organization shared theme. This theme is reading all the variables from organization shared theme from ArcGIS Online. Here I'm just using some simple colors. This very bright yellow as the primary color right here. And also here's the demo or the other customized theme that you created. They will also show up here. So any of these themes that you can do is you can click the custom button and come into this setting panel. For example, over here you can change the theme colors to any other color. For example, I would like to change the primary color to purple. As you can see, the header in the panel is changed to purple, right? And in the future, we are going to provide more options within these settings to allow users to do more customization using the builder. So let's get back to the slides. So next, I would like to spend some time diving into the details of the core theme variables, as they will be the most commonly used concepts from the theme system in your future UI work. Okay, either it is customizing themes or creating a UI for your custom widgets. So first part of the core theme variables are the colors. So these are there are two groups of colors. One is the theme main colors and the color swatches. So in the picture shown below, the left half are the theme colors that define a theme overall color scheme. So if you are familiar with any existing theme frameworks such as Bootstrap or Material UI, you should be very familiar with these color names. Right, so just for example, primary colors, they are used to present primary UI elements, such as to show active states or interactive sections, for example, the buttons or the links. And the info, success, warning, and danger, they are alert colors. They are normally used to show status or states, such as the alert dialogues. Then the light color. The light colors, they are mostly used to show the background or the borders of the layout elements, such as the containers and the separators. And then we have the dark colors. They are mostly used by the text elements. Okay, and in the middle, based on the theme colors, groups of swatches or palettes are generated based on different shades or grayscales to provide the theme system with more varieties of color to choose from. Right now, each theme color has 9 different color variants. All these colors, the theme colors plus the color swatches, and some generic colors such as white, black, and transparent, they together make the color system in the theming framework. Okay, so next, we have the theme font variables. So they these variables, they include the definitions for first the font variables, the font family. So by default, we use Esri's default font family, which is the Avenir Next. But you can override this variable to use your own or your organization's own font family. And then we have the font sizes. First, there's a base font size variable that basically going to modify or changes the font size for all text elements. But there are also other element specific font size variables. For example, like the variables for the body tag, the headings, and the paragraph elements. Then we have the font weights. These are the variables to control how bold the text should be. And there are five options, including medium, light, extra light, bold, and extra bold. And the last one, we have the line heights. So these variables control the distance between lines of text shown in a paragraph. And we have 3 options, including the medium, small, and large. Right, then we have the spacing, border, and the shadow variables. The spacing variables, as seen in the first picture, they are used to define margin and paddings. And the border radiuses and the shadow variables, there are some handy shortcuts to some common CSS properties values. They are very convenient to use in writing the CSS for your app's UI. Okay, so here's a quick note. So if you have noticed that the theme system is using the REM or the RAM as the default unit instead of the pixels as a unit. So the RAM unit, it has some benefits. For example, because it is relevant to the root font size. So if you're modifying the root font size variable, you can easily resize everything in the UI, which makes the theme more flexible and responsible. And next, I'm going to talk about the CSS utility classes. So these CSS utility classes, they are generated from the core theme variables. And these classes can be easily added to any DOM element through the class name attribute. So since each of these classes is bound to one theme variable, it is convenient to make your app's UI consistent by adding these classes to your UI. For example, if you add a bg-primary class to a div, the background color of this div will be picking up the primary color from the theme. And that color will change from theme to theme. And in Experience Builder, we follow the same naming convention as the classes from Bootstrap. And the utility classes, they include, but not limited to, the followings: the background color, the text color, the border, padding and margin, shadow, and some other classes. Here we have the list of some most commonly used classes from the Experience Builder. And you can see we have the classes for the background color, text color, and then some font utilities. Next, here's an example of applying some utility classes to a widget. So in the highlighted area over here, we have added classes such as the bg-light. This class makes the background color of the widget to light, and the text dash primary. This is changing the text color to primary, and etc. So as you can see on the right, the container of the widget, it has some nice looking styles applied. So in the last section, I'm going to introduce the UI components library from the GMU framework. So in Experience Builder, we provide a library of UI components for the developers to use in their UI development. So with version 1.0, we have covered many of the core or common UI components, such as the buttons, drop-downs, inputs, radio buttons, checkbox, etc. And also the navigation components, such as the nav and tabs, and other common components such as the model and the card. And besides the common UI components, we are also working on providing more advanced components that are more tailored for Experience Builder requirements, such as the image selector components and also the setting components. And we are going to add more map or JS focused components in the future. Okay. So you may wonder how the UI components are styled. So in Experience Builder, we use the styled or the CSS in JavaScript way to write CSS. So there are several benefits of taking this new approach. The first one is using JavaScript to write CSS allow you to write logics and conditions within your CSS code. And you can also update the theme and at runtime very easily. And then the CSS styles are scoped. So this will avoid any gotchas with class name conflicts and allow you to write CSS targeted to only the components or widgets without worrying overriding the other styles. And by the way, in Experience Builder, we use Emotion.js as the third-party library. Right, so let's take a quick look at the like how to use emotion to add conditional CSS to your widget. So in this code, uh, at the top, we define a function that returns a CSS string that simply added first a font size of 2.5 rem and a text color based on the current count value from the component's state. If the count value is greater than 2, the text color will be in green and red if it is not. So then to apply the styles, in the DOM structure definition below, we append the CSS styles as a prop to the paragraph, which is the P element. And emotion will take care of the rest of these at runtime to dynamically create a class with a unique name and with the calculated CSS styles wrapped in it. And this class will be appended to the paragraph element on the fly. So a quick note. So please consider using the UI components from Gmo library before trying any other UI libraries, such as Material UI or Design. This is mainly because our components are tightly bound with the theming framework. So in order to have a consistent look and feel, uh, I recommend you to use the components from the Gmo UI library. So last, we're going to show a very quick demo on the core variables and the UI components available right now. So let's add this. Go to the over here. So a quick tip is that you can visit this theme dash builder from your local app or from the online experience builder app, which you can preview all the core variables, for example, the colors and the sizes and etc. Variables for each theme. For example, if you switch to a dark theme, so these show the variables from that theme. So let's go back to a default. And over here under this core components tab, you can also preview all the core components over here. For example, the buttons, drop downs, form elements, navigation, etc. And you can play around with the themes by just selecting different themes to preview those. And you can have a quick preview on the existing advanced components available right now. And we are thinking to add the storybook support, which will be more powerful than the current component preview builder over here to assist you more on your UI development work. And okay, that's pretty much it for the themes and the UI component section. Back to you, David.
Great, thanks, Yue. Okay. So you're probably wondering what's next. Well, this was an intro session. It was our first one exactly that's ever recorded. So hopefully you've learned something new. So what do we recommend doing from here? Well, we're going to be doing another session. It's called ArcGIS Experience Builder, Building Web Solutions, Advanced Topics. And in that session, we'll get more into message actions triggers. We'll talk about more data sources. We'll get into more a little deeper dive into widget development and UI stuff. And then your next call to action is to download the developer edition. Just go to the developers.arcgis.com and look for Experience Builder and download the developer's edition and give us your feedback. Let us know what you think by posting stuff on GeoNet. And then if you're new to React and TypeScript, I know we briefly talked about it. That would be sessions that we would need to create in themselves. We're certainly not experts on that. We obviously use it within ours, so we know it, but we're not obviously certified instructors on that. But there's tons of documentation out there, like how we've learned it. So if you're new to it, we recommend learning it and so you can implement it into your logics for widget development, etc. And with that, we would like to thank you, and hopefully you learned something new, and check out our other sessions. Thank you very much, everybody.
Thank you.